Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. The bridge of the Dominion High Command was silent. Too silent. Every screen glowed with red alerts, every officer frozen as the shape came into view. Commander Elik stood at the edge of the holomap, staring hard, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. It had just appeared. No warp signature. No beacon trail. Nothing. Like the universe had blinked and dropped something ancient into their space. Distance? He asked, barely above a whisper. 47,000 units and closing, the sensor tech replied, his voice shaking. No signs of braking. No communications. No registration. Elik swallowed hard. Is it cloaked? No, sir. It's just invisible to our systems. We only see it because it's blotting out the stars behind it. The screen flashed, just for a second, enough to freeze everyone on the bridge. The ship didn't shimmer or glow. It didn't carry flags or patterns. It was matte, blacker than black, like someone had cut a hole in reality and stitched it shut with anger. It didn't move like a cruiser or glide like a scout. It didn't move like anything. It drifted, but fast, like it didn't care about physics at all, like it wasn't part of space, but space was part of it. What are we looking at? Elik asked, afraid of the answer. An old officer in the corner, one with gray in his hair and battle scars down his neck, looked up from his terminal. His voice cracked. That's human. That's Terran. Everyone turned. No one dared speak. Terrans were a story told to frighten new recruits. A war long ended. A species wiped out. A war crime hidden under metals and silence. They're extinct, someone finally said. We made sure of it. The transmission came through just then. No one had touched the comms. No one had routed the channel. It forced its way in like it belonged there. The voice was mechanical, slow, low, not loud, but it didn't need to be. You fired first. Elik's heart skipped. The voice continued. You erased our names, our cities, our sky. You taught us silence. Now you will hear ours. Silence followed. Then, like a whisper from the edge of time itself, the human warship fires last. Alarms erupted across the station, but it was too late. The ship had already entered the perimeter, and no one, not the AI, not the automated defense grid, not even the fleet intelligence satellites could track it. To them, it still wasn't there, but it was. And it was coming. To them, it still wasn't there, but it was. And it was coming. Across the Dominion command bridge, voices rose all at once. Panic was loud but useless. Commander Elik barked orders over the noise, anything to drown out the thunder in his chest. Engage external sensors. Force override. Bring targeting systems online. Get me visuals. I don't care how. Just get me a lock. The AI didn't respond. He turned to the systems officer. Did it hear me? Yes, sir, she said, hands hovering over her interface. Her fingers weren't moving. She wasn't typing. She was staring. It's ignoring you. The core AI has locked us out. It says there's no target. Elik's throat went dry. What do you mean, no target? I mean, the system doesn't register a ship. It says there's nothing there. No heat, no signal, no mass. It's like we're staring at a shadow that doesn't exist. And yet, Elix said slowly. It's closing in. Another officer, a young ensign barely old enough to be on the bridge, turned in his chair. Sir, you need to see this. The main holomap flickered. The ship, still unrecognized, had crossed the halfway mark to the central defense ring. Not a single perimeter cannon had activated. The AI refused to fire, refused to even acknowledge the intruder. This isn't a system failure, Alec muttered. This is sabotage. No, sir, came the quiet reply from the grizzled officer in the back. It's worse. Alec turned. The old man's face was pale, like he was watching a nightmare unspool in real time. You've read the files from the Juno Vault, haven't you? The man asked. Alec hesitated. The Terran protocols? That's myth. Ghost stories. They're not myths, the officer said grimly. The Terrans had tech. Deep tech. Stuff we still can't replicate. They didn't build ships to be seen. They built ships to be remembered, only after they're done. A low hum rolled through the station's walls, like the groan of a great beast waking from slumber. Impact tremor? Alec asked. Negative, someone said. It's proximity. It's so close. Our gravity sensors are bending around it, but there's still no physical signature. The ship's presence is affecting local mass fields, but technically, it's not there. The lights flickered. Across the Dominion Fleet Command, the primary interface screens began to fill with static. One by one, the monitors shifted, once red, then white, then dark. A single line appeared in black text over a blank display. You fired first. Then the last shot is ours. Shut it down, Elec ordered. Emergency Protocol 19. Flush system memory. Wipe external comms. Trying, the tech called out. No response. It's already inside our network. Then kill the power manually. Kill everything. But no one moved. No one spoke. For a full 10 seconds, they just watched as the message faded from the screen and was replaced by an image. It was Earth, not a current image, not even a clean one. This was Earth from the war, from before, when the sky still had clouds and the oceans were blue, when the planet still breathed. The image zoomed in, slowly, to a skyline wrapped in fire, orbital bombs falling, towers crumbling. A little girl, maybe 6, holding a small metal toy and staring up at the sky as light swallowed her world. Then black. Then silence. Then a voice. Not mechanical. Not angry. Calm. Measured. Human. You told the stars we were dangerous. You told your children we were gone. But your history is a lie, built on the ashes of our silence. Another image. A scorched Terran flag, half buried in glassed soil. The edges curled, the center still bright. A blue and white circle, Earth's mark. Now your silence ends. Alec stepped forward, chest tight. How is this even possible? They must have had a fallback network, said the old officer. Buried under our own systems. We never thought to look that deep. A communications aide ran into the room, panting. Sir, planetary shields are activating. Finally, something working, Elix snapped. The aide shook her head. No, sir, they're not ours. He stared. She swallowed. The Terran ship activated them. It's using our own defensive systems to lock us inside, not keep them out. That's when the fear became real, the kind that didn't sit in your stomach. It sat in your bones. A transmission lit up again. This time, across every screen, every console, every embedded neural display across the planet. A single line. We don't want to win. We want you to lose. And then everything shut down. No power. No shields. No communications. Just dark. Outside the bridge's windows, stars blinked and disappeared. Not because they'd moved, but because something massive had passed between them and the station. The ship. It was right there. They couldn't see it, but they felt it. And then, at last, they heard it. Not through sound waves, not through speakers, through memory, through mind, through a voice that didn't need permission to speak. You ended our world with fire. We return the favor with silence. The last backup generator hummed one final breath before the entire station fell still. Only the emergency lights remained, dull red, blinking like a dying heartbeat. The bridge crew stood frozen, staring at their reflections in darkened screens. Alec tried to speak, but there was no sound, no language that felt big enough to hold what was happening. He turned to the old officer. What's their goal? The man looked back, eyes hollow. This isn't a raid. It's not a siege. It's proof. Proof of what? That we were wrong. That we didn't end them. That they're not human anymore. There's something else now. Outside, something began to move in formation behind the invisible ship. Smaller signatures. Dozens. Then hundreds. Pods. Units. Terran deployments. They fell like a silent meteor shower, descending toward the planet's surface, with no warning, no light, no fire. Just gravity and purpose. Alec stood frozen at the glass, eyes wide. He knew what was coming, and he knew. This was only the beginning. Commander Alec didn't know when he had sat down. His legs just stopped holding him up. His hand gripped the edge of the command table so tightly his knuckles had turned white, but he barely noticed. The entire bridge had gone silent. Not the kind of quiet that comes after chaos, but the kind that comes before a storm. Outside, the thick observation pane, darkness pressed in. Not space. Not the familiar, glittering void they all knew. This was different. Heavy. Present. A pressure that wrapped around the station like a fist holding its breath. And then it appeared. Not with fanfare. Not with noise. It simply stepped out of invisibility like a ghost returning home. 1 second the stars were there. Next, they were gone. Blocked by a shape that stretched from one end of the sky to the other. The Terran warship had arrived. No designation, no registration, no signal. It was the kind of ship that shouldn't exist. Not by any known engineering, not by physics, not by any military design ever logged in the Dominion's grand archives. Its surface was layered in plates of scorched black alloy, not polished, not refined, scarred, jagged, like it had been through battles with time itself. Its design was blunt and brutal, no elegance, no artistic flair, just mass and silence. The kind of silence that made people speak softer and breathe slower. On its hull, a single symbol glowed faintly. 2 colors. Blue and white. Circular. A forgotten flag. Earth. Alec stood again, pushing himself upright even though his knees trembled beneath him. Magnify the forward view, he whispered. No one moved. Do it, he barked. The screen zoomed in, pixel by pixel, until the ship filled their vision. It looked more like a predator than a vessel. Its edges were sharp, but not for show. Every line, every angle looked like it had been made for one thing: closing distance and ending life. And there were no windows, no lights, no visible weapons. And still, every part of it screamed danger. This doesn't make sense, muttered the science officer. There's no propulsion signature, no thermal output. It's not emitting radiation, not pulling power from nearby systems. How is it moving? It's not moving, said the old veteran again. It's advancing. The command room lights dimmed one notch, then another. One of the screens sparked. Emergency systems were being tapped, slowly, silently, as if the ship wasn't just approaching the planet, it was already in it. Then a second ship appeared, just as silent, just as dark. But this one was different. It didn't even try to look sleek. It looked angry. Its hull was a patchwork of melted plates, twisted structures, salvaged armor, like it had been ripped apart and reassembled with bare hands in the middle of a war. Across its side, a series of deep scorch marks formed a pattern. No letters, just tally marks, dozens, hundreds, maybe more. Each mark meant something. Each one was a kill. Where did it come from? Someone asked, voice cracking. No idea. There was no jump signature. It just decloaked, right next to the other one. The two ships hovered in formation, silent and still, waiting, watching. And then, movement. From beneath the belly of the first Terran ship, something emerged. A small object, sleek and blunt, shot downward toward the planet's surface. Then another. Then 10. Then 100. Drop pods. Hundreds of them. The skies lit up, not with fire or thruster trails, but with streaks of falling metal. Like needles of black rain, they sliced through the atmosphere in perfect formation. No drift, no wobble, just straight descent. Some landed in oceans, others in the mountains. But most fell toward the city, toward them. They're deploying ground units, Elick muttered. Full insertion protocol. There's no fleet, someone said, almost in denial. There's no support craft, no landing gear. What kind of force drops without cover? The kind that doesn't need it, came the reply. Each pod hit like a meteor. Shockwaves rippled across the landscape, shattering glass and throwing debris through the air. The ground trembled with every impact. Across the Dominion's planetary defense grid, alarms wailed in panic, but not a single auto-turret fired. Not one drone took to the sky. They were paralyzed. The system still refused to register any targets. We're blind, Elick said, and they're already inside. Moments later, the first report came in. Strike Zone Delta 4. Breached. No survivors. Echo 9 perimeter. Overrun. AI command collapsed. High Chancellor's compound. Evacuated. Unknown hostiles inside the city walls. It was happening too fast. The Dominion had faced invasions before. Rebellions. Raids. Even full planetary assaults. But nothing like this. This wasn't an invasion. This was a message. A statement. The Terrans hadn't shown up to negotiate. They hadn't come to threaten. They had come to remind. Remind the galaxy What happens when you fire the first shot? Back on the bridge, Alec watched one pod's live footage from a satellite feed. It had landed near a civilian sector. Streets were empty. People had either fled or were hiding. Smoke drifted between buildings. Then something stepped out of the pod. It was humanoid, but far too large. Nearly 3 meters tall, its frame encased in black armor, heavy and sharp. The helmet glowed with 2 blue slits, eyes that didn't blink. It carried no flag. It wore no insignia. But across its chest, clear as day, shone 2 glowing letters. SV, the warship's name. S, Vengeance. The figure walked slowly, not because it was cautious, but because it didn't need to hurry. It was alone. It was unafraid. And with every step, the satellite feed flickered. Alec watched it stop in front of a destroyed patrol vehicle. A Dominion soldier crawled from the wreckage, arm shattered, blood pouring from his mouth. The Terran raised its weapon slowly, but it didn't fire. Instead, it tilted its head. The blue eyes narrowed. Then, from the suit, a voice rang out. Not loud, but deep, clear, unmistakable. You fired first. The feed went dark. The feed went dark. On the bridge, no one breathed. Commander Alec stood frozen, eyes locked on the blank screen as if staring long enough might bring the image back. But it didn't. The satellite was gone. Either destroyed or overridden by something that didn't care about being seen. He turned slowly. How many pods have landed? The tactical officer didn't respond at first. She was staring at her console, lips trembling. Finally, she answered in a whisper. 437 confirmed. More still entering atmosphere. Alec's mind tried to grasp the scale. These weren't scouting teams. They weren't raiders. This was an army. A cold silence settled across the room again, interrupted only by the low thrum of failing backup systems. Somewhere deep inside the command core, another system died with a soft pop. Sparks fluttered from a wall panel, but nobody flinched anymore. Then came the second feed. It flickered to life unexpectedly, grainy, shaking. A street cam, not military, civilian grade. It had survived somehow. The image was crooked, the lens cracked, but the scene was clear. A residential block, burning. Rubble covered the road. One building had collapsed into the other. Then, from the far end of the street, something moved through the smoke. Black shapes. 2. Then 4. Then more. Terran soldiers. But they weren't wearing standardized armor. No polished chrome. No glowing emblems. Their gear was mismatched, jagged and covered in old war paint. Symbols scratched into chest plates, stripes across helmets, tally marks carved into shoulders. Every single one of them moved with the confidence of someone who knew this path. They didn't shout. They didn't coordinate. They didn't need to. They were home. The camera shook again as the ground rumbled from a distant explosion. Then, from the left of frame, 2 Dominion patrol units came into view. Standard infantry, uniforms still crisp, weapons raised. One of the Terran soldiers raised a fist. The others stopped. It was a gesture Alec hadn't seen since old training tapes from before the war. The soldier stepped forward, alone. The Dominion guards fired first. 2 plasma bolts screeching through the air. The Terran didn't dodge. He walked through the blasts like they were rain, the plasma dispersing across his armor harmlessly. He stopped 3 paces from the patrolman, looked them both in the eye through the mask, and spoke. The mic on the cam barely caught the words, "You're not my enemy." Then he raised his weapon and fired. One shot. One soldier down. The other screamed and ran. The Terran didn't chase. Back on the bridge, Alik's fists clenched. Why didn't he kill the second one? The old officer behind him spoke without turning. Because that wasn't the message. What is the message? Alik snapped, his voice finally cracking. What do they want? The answer came through every speaker on the planet. Millie. It didn't come from the comms. It didn't use their network. It just arrived, like the sound had always been waiting. You fired first. You glassed our skies. You silenced our children. Now you watch us walk through fire. Across the Dominion capital, speakers that had been silent for decades crackled to life. Old broadcast towers, unused since the Empire consolidated its network, hummed again. Public billboards blinked. Neural implants, long dormant, sparked with unwelcome energy. And every single one delivered the same words. Then the screens changed. History. Real history. Footage the Empire had buried. On Earth. In the colonies. In the minds of its people. Bombardments. Executions. Civilian evacuations turned to traps. And the children, always the children, curled into bunkers that never kept out the light of fire raining from the sky. The feed showed the last words of Earth's governor. The screams. The dust. The silence that came after. And then the camera turned toward the heavens, where the Dominion fleet waited. Massive, uncaring, proud. Make them remember. Alik turned to the comms officer, furious. Cut it off, all of it. I don't care if you have to rip the wires from the floor. Just stop the transmission. I can't, she said. They're not broadcasting anymore. They're not sending a signal. What does that mean? They're in our systems. Not around. Not above. Inside. It's like they've always been here. Just waiting. The old man behind Alik didn't speak. He just stared at the screen, watching as another Terran squad entered view. This one inside the capital itself. The streets were chaos now. Sirens screamed, but not one emergency vehicle moved. The roads were jammed with debris. Civilians were scattering, but the Terrans didn't touch them. They moved through the crowds like shadows, scanning for uniforms, for badges, for weapons. Dominion soldiers were targeted. Neutral people weren't. One feed showed a Terran kneeling beside a crying child trapped under debris. An Imperial child. The soldier handed the child water from a hip canister, lifted the wreckage with one hand, and passed the child to a fleeing mother without a word. The camera operator whispered, "Why are they helping them?" And again, no one had the answer. Alik's eyes narrowed. They weren't here for conquest. They weren't here for territory. They were here to show something. Another screen flickered on, this one from a hospital wing. Dominion medics huddled around the injured, confused and terrified. A Terran soldier entered, gun lowered. The room froze. Then he pulled out a pack of medical supplies and tossed it on the floor. Ancient Terran kits, manual, analog, untraceable by digital AI. Then he left, without speaking. The Dominion had called the Terrans savages once. Now they moved like angels of death and mercy, deciding who lived and who burned. And they were everywhere. In the core cities, in the underground bunkers, on the orbital platforms. The invasion hadn't taken hours. It had taken minutes. Commander Elik felt something shift inside him. Not just fear now. Something deeper. A truth. This wasn't war. This was return. 100 years of silence. 100 years of stories. 100 years of believing the last Terran ship had self-destructed. But it hadn't. It had waited. Now, it was firing its last shot, and the galaxy was watching. Commander Elik stood at the center of a dying command post. The bridge no longer looked like the strategic heart of a planetary defense network. It looked like a tomb. Lights blinked with no rhythm, as if the systems themselves were confused. The floor buzzed with weak power, cycling through backup batteries not meant to last. Screens flashed static more than they did information. The enemy hadn't shut them down. They'd simply made the systems irrelevant. Status report? Elik muttered, not really expecting an answer. The officers around him moved like shadows, faces pale, lips cracked from hours without water, eyes sunken with the weight of disbelief. One of them tried to speak, but only coughed. Another whispered, "They've taken the capital spire. The High Council's been evacuated." To where? No one knew. Or if they did, they weren't saying. Truth was now a currency too expensive to spend. Elik looked toward the city map on the central screen. What was left of it? Dozens of red warning markers lit up in clustered formations, flashing over old Dominion structures, barracks, drone silos, armories. Every one of them marked as compromised. Not destroyed, not contested, compromised. The Terrans weren't leveling buildings. They were replacing them, co-opting everything the Empire had built. From the ashes of Earth, they had learned more than survival. They'd learned how to infect. "Commander," said the old man behind him again, his voice so quiet, it was almost respectful. "There's something you should see." He waved a hand across the console, and another video appeared on the main screen. This one from a news drone above the Capitol Square. Hundreds of civilians had gathered, not in protest, not in panic, in witness. At the center of the plaza, the old statue of the Dominion's founder lay crumbled, shattered from the knees down. In its place, a new figure stood, tall, armored in black, with a Terran insignia painted across the chest. Not a soldier, not a war machine, a symbol. The crowd stood in silence. No one moved. They just watched as one of the Terran warriors drove a metal spike into the ground at the statue's base. Atop it, a flag, rough, torn, but still intact. The circle of Earth, blue and white, weathered but proud. The message was clear. They weren't trying to rule. They were replacing the lie. Elik turned away from the screen, chest heaving. How are they doing this? How did we let it get this far? The old man didn't answer. He didn't need to, because deep down, Elik already knew. The Empire hadn't lost this battle today. They'd lost it 100 years ago when they told the galaxy Earth was dead. They'd poured fire into oceans, vaporized cities, and turned living planets into memorials to their own arrogance. And they thought that was the end. But all it had done was bury seeds. And now those seeds were blooming. Across the city, Dominion resistance crumbled not from combat, but from crisis. Orders stopped flowing. AI cores shut down. Communications blacked out. Soldiers abandoned their posts, not because they were cowards, but because they had no one left to answer to. And in the void of authority, something else rose. The truth. The Terrans had made sure of it. Every screen, every network, every personal implant still operational looped the same series of feeds. Earth's final days, shot from every possible angle. Children running through the dust. Cities crushed by orbital bombardments. Warnings ignored. Surrenders executed. And always, always, the same soft voice from the past. If they erase us, let the stars remember who we were. It didn't matter what species you were. You could be Dominion, fringe world miner, neutral trader. If you had a conscience, you felt it. You knew. The Terrans weren't just here to strike back. They were here to tear the story down. And nothing was more dangerous than a ghost with proof. "Commander," a young officer called out, one of the few still clinging to rank. "Something's happening on the orbital bands." "Speak." "The Dreadnought, the second ship, the Patchwork one, it's moved." Elix straightened. "Where?" The officer didn't answer with coordinates. He just pulled the feed onto the central screen. The second Terran vessel, larger, angrier, stitched together like a wound, had descended lower in orbit. It now hovered directly above the Dominion's military archives, not its command center, not its munitions factory, its history. "What are they doing?" Elik asked, but the answer came too fast to be coincidence. A beam shot from the underside of the Dreadnought. Not a weapon, not a laser. A signal. High band frequency, low energy, broadcasting into the archives, not out. The screen flickered as internal Dominion protocols began to unravel. Data decrypting, vaults unlocking, safeguards crumbling. One by one, the Empire's most classified war files became public knowledge. Project Glassfall, targeting unarmed Terran refugee ships. Operation Pulsewave, testing crowd dispersal neurotoxins on captured colonies. Protocol 17, execution of Terran civilians post-surrender. The bridge staff went still. No one spoke. It was one thing to lose a war, another to lose face. The Empire wasn't falling because the Terrans were stronger. It was falling because the truth was stronger than the lies holding it together. Across the city, more screens lit up with documents long buried, audio logs, officer confessions, tactical orders that never should have seen the light of day. The kind of truths that made soldiers take off their uniforms and civilians march straight into government buildings. The galaxy wasn't just watching anymore, it was choosing sides. "Sir," the comms officer said suddenly, face pale, "we're receiving requests." "From who?" "Other systems, fringe colonies, border fleets, even rebel factions. They're asking to parley with them." Commander Elik blinked. "With the Terrans?" She nodded. "They want to talk. They're offering help. Coordination. Some are surrendering outright." Elik gripped the edge of the table again. It was happening. Not an invasion. Not a rebellion. A reckoning. 100 years of silence. And now, a single voice echoing through the ruins. "You fired first. You fired first. The words kept playing. Not loud, not angry, just steady. Like a drumbeat from the past pounding into the present. Commander Elec stared at the flickering hollow map of the Dominion's territories. Once a glowing sprawl of red markers stretching across 6 sectors, it was now full of gaps. Systems dark. Borders blinking. Some markers had changed color entirely. Green, blue, white. Neutral. Defected. Gone. One by one, they were abandoning the Empire, not because they had been invaded, but because they believed the Terrans. Across the Midbelt, garrison worlds shut down their own power grids and raised white beacons of surrender. In the Rim colonies, former rebel cells reactivated their comm towers, not to fight, but to broadcast. They weren't hiding anymore, and everywhere else, silence. Not the scared silence of submission. The heavy, waiting silence of a storm that's past, but not finished. Elec wiped the sweat from his brow, not noticing the way his hand trembled. The war was over. It hadn't ended with the Empire winning. It hadn't even ended with the Terrans declaring victory. It ended because there was no one left willing to fight for the lie. A voice echoed across the fractured Dominion comms, cutting through static and fear. It was clear, human, steady. This is not vengeance. This is memory. The screen above them lit up, one final time. The image was simple. Chancellor Mu, the highest figure of the Ascendancy, on her knees in her own palace. Her crown discarded, her robes torn. Behind her stood a Terran soldier, face hidden, arms folded, no weapon in hand, no need for one. In front of her, citizens, reporters, children, witnesses. A new voice played across the screen. Female, Terran, unshaken. We didn't come to raise a new empire. We came to tear yours down and leave the truth standing. And you get to watch. Elec could hear his own heart pounding in his ears. On the screen, Chancellor Mu tried to speak, but no words came, just tears. Then a final broadcast signal swept across all open channels, civilian, military, even black band encrypted ones. It was short, final. The Empire has fallen. Earth was never dead. Earth was watching. And then, the Terran ships powered down their weapons. They didn't fire a final shot. They didn't drop more pods. They simply turned. The SV Vengeance began to ascend, rising through the sky like a shadow lifting off a wounded world. The second ship followed, slower, its engines pulsing with ancient fury. They did not gloat. They did not boast. They left like ghosts satisfied that the dead had been heard. Commander Elec stood alone now. The officers behind him were gone. Some fled. Some collapsed. Some simply broken by the weight of what they'd seen. He looked one last time at the image of the Terran flag, still flying in the square. And he whispered, to no one but himself, we should have listened. Above, in the cold black of space, the 2 Terran ships vanished. Not with a bang, not with a flash. They simply disappeared into silence. And across the galaxy, where once there was fear of Terrans, now there was respect, and something even greater, remembrance.